The power load system on ambulance 87-6 can be operated when there is no power to the unit in a manual mode. There are energy indicators located on the head of the chassis in these two locations. If you don't see any lights, that means the unit has no power and needs to be manually overridden. The manual override requires two providers. One provider at the head of the stretcher, one provider at the base of the stretcher. The provider at the base of the stretcher will unlock the stretcher as normal. The provider at the top of the stretcher will depress the red button. The provider at the bottom of the stretcher will pull the unit out. They will proceed to pull the unit out until it is completely out of the vehicle. Once the unit has been removed from the vehicle, the chassis can be operated in a manual mode. The first step is to release the carriage on the stretcher. Go ahead. You'll notice that although the legs have descended, the control arms have not. To activate the control arms, you'll go to the manual override function on the chassis. You will start off by depressing the button. You'll notice that the chassis went down. While depressing the button, you are going to pull the levers down as such. Make sure, I need you in here. Depressing the manual release and pulling down on the handle at the same time releases the hydraulics. The manual release requires a good deal of pressure. Once that has been done, you can release the red catch at the head of the stretcher and remove the stretcher. Another common problem that may occur with the auto load system is that the stretcher power may not be active. To remove the unit without stretcher power, you would release the base lock as normal. You would pull the entire unit out of the vehicle. Once the unit has reached its fully extended position, you would use the automatic release to lower the chassis. Once the chassis has been lowered, we would come forward to the main hub and use the down arrow to lower our supports. Once our supports have been lowered, the stretcher can be removed from the ambulance as normal. In the event that either the stretcher chassis or the stretcher itself has gone out of service, whether independently or in unison, the stretcher can still be placed into the vehicle by following the final directions here. First step is to pull up on our supports. Once they're in the upright position, you can push the entire chassis into the vehicle. Push the chassis all the way to the forward position. At this time, you would load the stretcher in a normal fashion as we would for any non-power load system. The stretcher goes in. We're going to hook to the latch, down a little, pull back. We're going to raise the stretcher up. And we load the stretcher in a normal fashion. If the stretcher did not have power, we can use the manual release levers here to raise and lower the chassis, just like a non-powered cot. Once the unit is in, the unit is secure. After manually loading the stretcher system, it becomes necessary to reset the system. If we go to remove the stretcher, go ahead and remove the stretcher, we can see that the stretcher is coming out like a normal stretcher would. without the chassis attached to it. Keep pulling. And drop the chassis. To reset the system, we have to remove the stretcher manually. To reset the unit, we pull up on the braces, hit the large red button to the rear of the Striker power load, and we pull the entire system outward. Once the unit has come all the way out, we can now place our stretcher into it and function in normal operation. Remembering that both of the horn lights need to be green to operate correctly. Our braces are raising, our unit is lifting, and the unit is ready to be loaded back into the truck. The unit is now secure and reset for operations.